Hello humans, this is Danny Wolverton, aka Special Head, and this is the first episode of my podcast, Confronting the Echo. Yes, I'm just going to take the time in this podcast to explain what this podcast is about and why I was inspired to do this. I am the performer known as Special Head. You may remember me from my levitation performances on America's Got Talent, Tengo Talento da Super Talent, Don Francisco's show, among others. But really, the reason why I chose to be a performer, to do all of this, is because I realized in my 20s that I am one of the most privileged people in the world. And I'm not talking about just white privilege. I'm talking about the point at which I was born, the family that I was born into, the upbringing that I was fortunate enough to have. All these things contributed to giving me a very unique perspective on the world. And I believed, and still believe, that I have some knowledge that can help save the world. And I believe this unique upbringing, this unique perspective, is something that the world can learn from, and something that can help guide people who are seeking answers. So really, all of the performances that I do while being a source of income, they're like an attention getter. They're like the sugar that goes along with the medicine. For it's a lot easier to convince someone of something if you give them an art piece that they are able to reflect, digest, and interpret how they are. For the best way to persuade somebody is to cause them to believe that they came up with the idea themselves, to leave little breadcrumbs along the way that allow them to come up with their own conclusion. That way they can own it. That way they don't feel like it's somebody else's thoughts, that they've been brainwashed. So I'm being upfront about this. I went on America's Got Talent, I levitated, and people believed that I levitated. I performed illusion magic shows. I performed performances as many different characters. In my pursuit of illusions, I began to understand the psychology of deception. And I started to see how much people in the world allow themselves to be deceived. So part of the gist of this podcast is confronting the echo chamber that you live in, asking the hard questions. And I want to challenge people. I want to make people feel uncomfortable at times. Usually when one is uncomfortable, they are growing, they are changing, they are confronting themselves and their own worldviews and ideologies. You know, the tests, the trials, the tribulations that we experience, they are there to push us to grow. For this world is like the baby in the womb. We are growing our spirit bodies in this world, and we have no idea what our spirit bodies will be used for in the next world. But when we die, the spirit bodies will become our bodies. And it will become evident why we were growing all of these spiritual qualities like love, trustworthiness, kindness, loyalty, detachment, honesty, all of these things. It's just like the baby growing fingers, eyes, nose, mouth. All these things in the womb, it doesn't need them. But when the baby is born, it becomes evident what they are for. So in that, yes, you go through hard times, bad things happen to good people, because that is how we grow. And that's what this world is for growing our spirits. It's my belief, based on the Baha'i teachings, that in the spiritual world that we are reborn into, there will be no time. There will also be no ability to lie, for you become your consciousness, you become your thoughts. So people will be able to see your thoughts. Other consciousnesses will know what you're thinking. So the people that learn to use lying and deception in this world to get ahead, prosper, will actually be born handicapped, crippled in the next life, as they will not be able to use that tool of deception in the next world. So the reason why I think that I'm so privileged and decided to go on this pathway of being a performer, of catching people's attention, is because primarily the two religions that I was raised are very unique, different religions that, one, most people aren't raised these religions, and I've never met anyone who has been raised both of these religions in conjunction with each other. So please reach out to me if you have been. I was raised in the Native American Peyote Church, and also I was raised Baha'i. See, my father took me camping when I was 12 years old, and he fed me peyote cactus, a psychedelic, and took me on a vision quest. That's a whole other story. And so both of these religions, what makes it a very amazing upbringing, what a privileged upbringing, is that both of these religions are very open-minded and accepting of other religions. Like, as opposed to Christianity, where a lot of Christian churches are saying that, oh, all the other religions are wrong except for our church, and even the other Christians are wrong, and we're the only right ones, and you're going to hell if you don't come to our church. Some forms of Christianity, Catholicism, they could be very sexually repressive to any alternative lifestyles, and repressive towards gay people, trans people, what have you, repressive towards feminism. So I would see so many people that were left with a bad taste in their mouth associated with Christianity, or Judaism or Islam, a lot of different religions. I was fortunate enough that I was raised two religions that were open-minded, that didn't say everybody else is wrong except for us. In fact, Baha'i would say that the only thing that's wrong to believe in is that other people are wrong for what they believe in. The other amazing thing is that both of these religions showed me two opposite sides of a spectrum, in that one is very ancient, primal, earthy. Every tree has a spirit in it. There's a God inside the mountain. And Baha'i is very modern, progressive. They believe in complete equality between men and women. They believe in evolution and science. They believe in independent investigation of the truth. And there's where the part about not believing that other people are wrong for what they believe in comes in, is because your connection with God, with higher power, is internal. It's inside of you. Nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can change that, because that is your own personal belief. It's a personal connection. So your own personal truth, that's the truth for you. So it is wrong to tell other people that they are going to hell for what they believe in. And that because we are educated and literate today, that it's our duty to read sacred texts for ourselves and determine what they mean for us. The reason why Christianity was structured around a priest reading the Bible and then doing a sermon of their own personal interpretation of the Bible is because Christianity came about in a time when the vast majority of people were illiterate. There was only scribes, and maybe some of the royalty could hire a tutor to teach them how to read. The tax collector could read or do math at least, and then the priest was the other person that could read in that culture. So they needed church to be structured to where the priests are the ones doing the interpretation for you. But now, because we're literate and educated, it's our duty to read sacred texts for ourselves and determine what it means for ourselves. And even Baha'i families are encouraged to educate their children about a multitude of religions. And you can't actually become a Baha'i until you're 15 years old. That's the age of religious consent in the Baha'i faith. So I felt very fortunate that I was shown two different sides of that spectrum, a very ancient religion and very modern progressive religion, and both the Native American church and the Baha'i religion were very open-minded and accepting of gay people, accepting of other faiths and other religions. Basically, the Baha'i faith believes that all of the previous religions are truths in their own right. They're just different teachers for different time periods and different geographical areas. This very interesting upbringing, I could help people, maybe grappling with guilt from being raised religion or animosity towards religion. Because when you go to college or, go to history class, you learn about all the atrocities that are caused in the name of religion. And it suddenly seems like religion is this very violent and destructive thing to the world. And that's not what I believe at all. Luckily, the Baha'i faith was able to put all of the religions into context for me to see what they were. And so this is one of the main outlooks that I really want to share with the world. That's a kind of an underlying theme in the background of everything that I do, but you might not notice it right away. Another way that the life that I was born into was very privileged was Well, I got to travel around the world from a pretty young age. Since I was 19, I started doing study abroad programs, I started backpacking, and so I got to see the world. I traveled to South America, Africa, the Middle East, and Europe in my 20s, and it really showed me a lot of perspective about, many different peoples. I got the typical college experience, but also the other big thing was that when I was 17 years old, before I turned 18, my parents moved out of the house that I grew up in and told me to find roommates to pay them rent because I was going to start going to college the next year. Well, 4 years later, my parents got divorced and my dad got the house in the divorce, but he didn't want to take care of it. So well, well, you're in charge of the house now. You get to keep the rent and you just manage it and deal with everything. And so at the age of 23, I found myself a landlord. And also, that granted me a passive income that allowed me to pursue all of the performance arts and music and different things that I wanted to pursue. I didn't have to work a 9 to 5, just to scrape by and exist. I had this little cushion of money income that allowed me to really pursue my dreams. And you'll notice it's much harder for people to pursue their dreams when they grow up poor because they have to do that struggle to just survive.